Hello.
Joe's on his third wine of the evening,
It's
he
fine.
insisted on bringing you on with him.
Yeah, wasn't allowed to bring the bottle in.
Yeah. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I just want to start off by asking you a little bit about what kind of cinema meant to you when you were growing up. Did you go to the cinema a lot? Did you watch films on TV?
Yeah, I did, and I think like with I was always very bad at understanding the plot of films. I think one of the reasons I remember watching Mission Impossible and not understanding who the good guys were, who the bad guys were, or what they were trying to stop happening.
Pretty crucial.
It's pretty crucial. And I think one of the reasons I like this film is that like it's got quite a convoluted plot, and the dude is a bit like me, being like, I don't understand the plot. But yeah, I think I watched films that I latterly, in terms of comedy, it's odd. Like it took a while. I think I didn't really have a sense of humor for a long time. I remember watching. It's not a film, but I remember watching Dad's Army when I was little, and I literally didn't understand why people were laughing. Like the laughter would sometimes start, and I'd be like, "Oh, they're laughing at something." And films that I watched as a kid were things like Ghostbusters, which I didn't really realize was a comedy, and then I watched it later, and I was like, "Oh, have people been told that Ghostbusters is quite funny? It's not actually about the evil ghosts and the heroes." And it's like, no, it was always a comedy. It was. So yeah, I don't know. That's a worrying sign in a way. It took a while for me to realise that the comedy was present. But yeah, this was a very this was an important one for me.
When we first asked you about what film to choose, initially one of the films that I know you really liked, but it's obviously not a comedy, but it's Jurassic Park. That is your big number one film.
That was my first favourite film and current favourite film. But no, it's not massively funny. This is I think in a way I suppose my tastes weren't terribly mature. I was quite a late developer, I think, in terms of finding comedy and intelligence. Initially I just wanted to be entertained and just wanted to see something exciting, and it's something that I sort of came to me quite late in life. Yeah.
So before we properly start talking about The Big Lebowski, what I'd just like to do is ask our audience, is there anybody here, if you put your hand up, if you've never ever seen The Big Lebowski at all?
Oh, wow, quite a lot. I was a bit worried about spoilers.
I would be really worried about spoilers now.
I did a talk to the Film Society at my school once that was about films with surprise endings. And there were just people walking out. And I was like, here's the usual suspects. People were like, fuck off. That was a total disaster. So I won't do that.
I see dead people.
I'll limit it to the film is called The Big Lebowski.
So can you remember anything about when you first saw the film, or when you kind of had, what kind of impact it had when you first watched it?
I didn't see when it came out, and originally I think I just remembered the bowling scenes, and I was very influenced by, there were two jokes I really liked. One was the John Goodman thing, where it was like he just bulldozed his way into dialogue. Like the other people would be talking, and then he'd be sitting there, and he'd be all moody, and then he'd go, "You know what, Donnie? The world does not stop and start at your fucking convenience, you miserable piece of shit." And I realized that you didn't, like, with dialogue, you could just kind of bulldoze your way in, or he'd be, it's funny, I was thinking it's a little bit like, it's almost a bit like the kind of internal monologue of Peep Show, but it's not an internal monologue. Like, Donnie, I'll be talking, he'd be like, "Fuck off, Donnie." That was one thing I liked. The other thing was the dude's just mangling of the language. Like, he hears a phrase, and then he repeats it later in a different context because he thinks it makes him sound impressive. There's a bit where he overhears, I think it's Nixon, and is it Reagan saying, 2 decades out, saying, "This aggression will not stand, this aggression against the West will not stand." And then later the dude's being kicked out of a taxi and he's saying, "Oh man, this aggression will not stand, man." And there's another good bit where someone uses the phrase in the parlance of our times, which he misunderstands, and he's saying later, like, "Look, dude, just, this is a relaxed guy, in the parlance of our times." And it always reminds me of the bit in The Office where Brent says, "Fit body, fit mind, mind the gap." Because it's just a phrase. He's just like, that's the thing that you say. So those were the two things that really stood out, kind of comedy-wise. But yeah.
And were you aware of the Coen Brothers' other work by the time you saw this?
I think I was. I'd seen Fargo, which actually is also very funny. I mean, the nice about the Coen Brothers, they're always funny, even when it's very dark. And or we may be saying before, there's a couple of exceptions, maybe, but in general, the comedy is always there. But this is the most inherently comic one, and they are terribly funny. I mean, there's so much good stuff in here, and I think a lot of it's quite formative.
I think one of the great things about the Coen Brothers is they always have these amazing characters, and they seem to be very inspired by other films they've seen, but also just by people around them. Literally, they just take everyday situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just kind of create these characters.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I think they often find that there's some characters in it who say they're nihilists, and they're obviously just amused by the idea of being like a nihilist, and they're like, we believe in nothing, imagine that, nothing. It's almost a childish amusement at this, but yeah, no, I think they're all incredibly finely drawn, and no matter what they're doing plot-wise, every character is very rich and kind of properly motivated and has real depth and history, and yeah, they're just brilliant filmmakers.
And in terms of this film, it's one of those films that seems to kind of just has built its reputation up as time has gone on. It's one of those films not everybody saw at the time, but over the years since, and it's now. I mean, it's the 20th anniversary, so this year is 20 years since the film was first released.
Yeah, well, it's a weird kind of genre as well, isn't it? Because it's got this very convoluted plot.
Very convoluted, and then they kind of draw on like Raymond Chandler and other kind of crime, and and it's this kind of weird mixture of different kind of textures.
It is, and the comedy kind of bleeds into it. It appears initially to be mainly comic, and then it becomes more and more complex, and the dude ends up being this detective who people think is sort of solving the crime, and he sort of is just stumbling around blindly. But it's. I'm sort of not surprised it's been a slow burn in some ways, because it's slightly undefinable, I think, in terms of genre. And
this is sort of some bits of information in terms of, so although the Coen Brothers have said they won't make a second movie, John Turturro persuaded them to let them use his character in this, Jesus, or Jesus, don't know how you pronounce it. So there is going to be a movie with him in it, which I think we're filming a couple of years ago. I'm not sure what's happened to it, but
that's amazing.
It's out at some point, so there will be a repeat of that character. But the Coen Brothers have nothing to do with it. It's very much. I think he's written it. I think he's directed it.
I mean, that's an extraordinary cameo. I think it's just it's almost like a sort of Better Call Saul kind of cameo. It's sort of like that character's so good, and it's this one little moment, the Jesus bit is incredible. Yeah.
So if people do find that they are such a great fan of this after seeing it, there is an annual festival called Lebowski Fest, which began in Louisville, Kentucky. It started with 150 fans showing up, and it's expanded to several other cities. The festival's main event each year is a night of unlimited bowling with various contests, including costume trivia, hardest and farthest travelled contests. But there is a British equivalent, I don't know if anybody's here, inspired by Lebowski Fest, is known as the Dude Abides, and it's held in London. Anybody here for the Dude Abides? Okay, maybe they've dropped out now. Maybe it doesn't exist anymore. And there is also Dudism, a religion devoted largely to spreading the philosophy and lifestyle of the dude from the film. It was founded in 2005. It's known as the Church of the Latter-day Dude. The organisation has ordained over 220,000 Dudist priests all over the world via its website. So it has actually had quite an impact.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. It has. So, I think it's now one of the more viable philosophies available. So, yeah, I'd vote for that.
What's also interesting about today is that today is the day that Netflix have just released a new Coen Brothers film,
yes.
which was it's a proper kind of cinema film, but they've released it on their platform today.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting.
The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yes.
So anybody feeling inspired today can go and see that. Before we watch the film, just a quick in terms of where you're at. I know that there's been stuff in the papers in the last few days saying, well, they've been sort of saying the In-Betweeners are reuniting.
Oh yeah.
You're not reuniting for a new show or anything. You're just reuniting to sort of talk about the fact
that hang out and just have a private dinner, and it's not going to be filmed. We're doing a sort of reunion show, I guess somewhere between hate to use the word clip show. But I mean, us going to places,
clip show, yeah.
us going to places we film stuff. Some element of us are kind of an audience with. All this sounds very classy, and
it was a classy show.
It's a classy show. No, it's
and obviously that's the 50th anniversary since the show.
It's the 50th anniversary. Yeah, that's right. Yes, it came out in 1948,
Yes.
and now it's no, it's not another film. Sadly, it's more a sort of celebration. But yeah, would be nice to do more. But no, this isn't that, unfortunately.
And I mean, do you all kind of keep in touch and so forth?
Yeah.
Because in one sense, obviously, it's a job, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
you're doing your job, but people are always fascinated about the relationships behind the scenes and so forth.
Well, I am very close to them. I mean, because it was our first sort of big job. I mean, as adults, I think James had been in Les Mis or something when he was. I think he'd done Gavroche?
Gavroche, yeah.
That's right. But yeah, we were.
Ragamuffin, wasn't he?
Yeah. So yeah, he's the ragamuffin. No, we are close. I think we were all kind of, because it was a formative time for us, and I think we were quite sort of. It was almost like meeting people at school or something. I mean, we were sort of at school, I guess. But yeah. But no, yeah, I see them a lot. They're genuinely very nice, and although they're all quite grown up now and have children and things like that. But I don't know what other things go into that category. You know, things like children.
Yeah. And pets. Pets?
Pets, yes, that's right, yeah.
That's grown up. That's
yeah.
responsibility, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. And yeah.
So, shall we watch?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Is there anything finally, anything we've not kind of touched on that you?
No, if someone could explain the plot to me afterwards, that'd be great.
Okay, we're going to watch Big Lebowski. A big thank you to Joe Thomas. Thank you.